Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 13th of June. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined by the young team this morning. First of all, Joshua Barry. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good. Grouping me and Ewan together. Quite right, Ewan.
How are we doing, Ewan?
Yeah, good. It's the first time I've been called young in a long time, so it's a good start today. But the hay fever kills me this time of the year, so apart from that, it's all good.
Yeah, it's absolutely sweltering down here still. It's roasting.com. We are slightly late. Broxy loves the Rangers review, says probably late as Derek's down Curry's trying to get his new laptop sorted again. No, it was sorted yesterday. I hope I don't have to go down to Curry's. There are other laptop stores available, but yeah, fingers crossed it stood up to the test yesterday, and let's hope it does so today. A few technical issues on Ewan's side this time with regards to sound, but we're here now to talk all things Rangers. Before we do that, just a shout out to Barry Smith. Got in touch. He says, any chance you could give a shout out for my Amber? She's an avid watcher and 11 years old today. So happy birthday, Amber. She's posted a lovely picture, a selfie with Yanis Hadji. aka Joshua. That was a nice little photo I get sent this morning, Joshua. So happy birthday from all of us at the Rangers Review, Amber. Hopefully you have a fantastic day. Right, quick word as well for our podcast sponsors, Seneca Hair Restoration, the top dogs in the hair transplant biz. If you're looking to restore some lost self-confidence, then these are the guys to go to. All their transplants are carried out by doctors. They are award-winning. They're an award-winning clinic, and as I've mentioned many times before, Tim Visser got his hair done with Seneca. So if he can get it done, then it should be good for all of us as well. So do go and check them out, and put in the links to their website, and all of which in the comment section as always. Right, let's talk Rangers, lads. Some interesting news yesterday coming out of Ibrox. Of course, we know that they are after a number of players this summer as Michael Beale revamps his squad. Sam Lammers, or Lammers, as Arthur Newman likes to call him, is now poised to clinch a 4-year deal, and he will become the fourth signing of the transfer window. Of course, it was revealed by our very own Chris Jack at the tail end of last week that he was close to putting pen to paper after negotiations with Serie A side Atalanta over a package worth more than £3 million. I've seen £3.5 million quoted in other places as well. It is set to arrive in the coming days to finalise a deal, and it will be until 2027. You will follow Kieran Dell, Dujon Sterling and Jack Butland to Ibrox. Of course, he spent last season on loan at Empoli in the first half of the season before joining Sampdoria. Did spend time on loan at Frankfurt as well. He was an unused sub, as I mentioned yesterday, for that Europa League final in Seville. Prior to that, he'd played for PSV and different clubs in Holland. It sparked a bit of debate, Joshua, it's fair to say, Sam Lammers on social media with regards to his goal return, and if he is a player that is deserving of such a huge outlay. You've done a lot of scouting on him in the last few days. What's your overriding opinion?
Yeah, well, we're going to have a piece tomorrow, Derek, kind of a long piece about him, as well as on the kind of member section of the YouTube channel. We'll have a longer video kind of looking at some of his stats and style of play. I think first you have to remember the context of anything, because Todd Cantwell hadn't scored in 2 years before he came to Rangers. I think he scored 6 or 7 goals by the end of the season, became a kind of a real attacking threat. And people held that against him before he came up the road. And I don't think anyone's questioning Todd Cantwell being the very front and centre of Michael Beale's Rangers. But back when he did sign, although he didn't sign for a lot of money, there was some questions about, it's a guy who's, not done well for Norwich the last year and a half, didn't kick off things on loan at Bournemouth. Is he the man to kind of, revolutionise Rangers with Michael Beale? It's all about context. And I think the reality of where Rangers are in the kind of just the financial food chain in football, they are. Sam Lammers went to Atalanta 3 seasons ago for about £10 million. Rangers can't get him at that stage. Similarly, when Todd Cantwell was performing like he did in the Premier League, he is out of their financial budget. You're not going to go and pay £20 million for him. the trick is that you try and get these guys when, like Campbell, they've maybe had a couple of difficult seasons, their value's down, and you need to be opportunistic and think, okay, this is a good place for them to get back to the best. Lammers, I mean, technically, I think he looks so good, Derek, that there will be questions over his goal scoring, and understandably so. He obviously scored, I think it was 16 in his first season on loan in the Eredivisie. He then has a bad injury, which kind of derails that season with PSV. He goes to Atalanta, and I mean, if you're getting signed by Atalanta at 22, 23 for a lot of money, then you're going to be a very good player because they're notorious talent spotters, aren't they? Again, that doesn't quite work out. Has a loan to Frankfurt, doesn't play that much. Last season, he's kicking about at the bottom of Serie A. I mean, I watched some of Sampdoria yesterday. They were terrible, just kind of chasing channel balls all the time. So I think it's all about looking at I guess in the transfer market, you're trying to look at what is the best quality you can get for the money you've got available. Who's a player who maybe showed a lot of promise but hasn't quite fulfilled it, because Rangers aren't going to go and get a player like Sam Lammers when he's at the very peak of his potential. As mentioned, they're not going to get him when Atalanta want him and are willing to pay £10 million for him. They've got to look at someone, and Beale's got to judge their character. That's why he's put so much emphasis on going to meet them. And you have to look at his track record so far, and similar extensions go to someone like Jack Butland, who hasn't played for the last couple of seasons as well. So there is risks involved with Derek, but I think if you look at what Beale did in January, then he kind of merits trust on that. Lammers, there's no, I think, doubting his quality. He's not played in a league like this before. It's just about for him trying to kind of regain the consistency in that season he showed earlier on in his career, and I guess finally kick on with those goal scoring numbers that he's not been able to hit in his last couple of loan spells.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Ewan, have you seen much of Lammers? What's your overall feeling on him? I know there's a lot of comments coming in. It's sparked a bit of this right down the middle, you could say. Some are quite optimistic and excited at this signing. Other ones are citing his goal record. Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I've not watched him as deeply as Joshua has, but I mean, I have done the classic, go to YouTube and type in his name and get the Welcome to Rangers clips and watch it. It's always the good bits you get in those, never the kind of the negative in those packages. But I think it's natural when a player's linked, the first place you go is on transfer market. Other websites are available, and you look at his goal scoring stats, and I think the concerns come from his goal record last season in other seasons. But you've got to kind of flip that. He's playing a Sampdoria side, like Joshua said, who's struggling in Serie A. He's coming to the Scottish Premiership with a Rangers side who are going to dominate, pretty much every game they play in. So I'd expect those numbers to skyrocket next season. I think technically he looks really good. He looks two-footed. He loves kind of switching the ball between both feet, kind of to get past defenders. I think there's a lot of promise in the signing. And the other thing I always consider as well, it's not like Michael Beale and his recruitment team have went on YouTube and typed in Sam Lammers as well. They've all scouted him in depth, and they'll obviously think we can get, a good return off the player. So I like him. I like his profile. He can probably play across the front line. So I think it's quite an interesting one.
Derek, just on Sampdoria conceded more goals. They lost more games, 25, than they scored goals, 24, in Serie A last season. So, obviously, players have responsibility for where their careers go, and be interesting to hear his take on his last few years. But it's not as if I think Lammers only had something like 22 shots over his 13 games at Sampdoria the second half of last season. It's not as if he's missing hundreds of chances that are put in front of him. There will undoubtedly be questions that can he, alongside Dessers, if Dessers come in, get the type of goals, the type of numbers that Rangers need to win the league. But I think quite clearly you're seeing that Michael Beale, as we'll cover again on the website and the members' videos this week, is moving to that two-striker system. So maybe that comes into it as well, the fact that he's going to be playing a partnership, and these two players feel very, very kind of suited to playing in the front two, especially if we look at Lammers moving to Atalanta, who are kind of they've played wide split strikers for years and years, which is the type of style that Rangers are adopting now. So that kind of fits in quite nicely as well.
Yeah, there's a comment coming in here directed at you, Joshua. John says, is it possible that Lammers has been signed as a 10? What do you think of that?
I think if you watch him, and we'll have this in the scout report, the thing he's so good at is when he gets the ball into his feet. If he's got a striker at his back, he can turn them either way because he's so two-footed, as Ewan kind of mentioned. stronger on his left, but equally comfortable on his right. I think he will be being signed to play in a front two. Remains to be seen what happens with Malik Tillman. I think at times you'll see Todd Cantwell play higher up the pitch as well. But if you look at the system that Rangers have been playing in, again, we're going to have a kind of deeper look on the website later this week, and myself and Johnny, I think, are going to do a members video on this. The way that Rangers front three is playing, I think, has changed quite a lot, and it requires two players down the sides who, we know that Beale loves hybrid players. If you look at every single player that's been signed or is close to being signed, extended to the defence, Dujon Sterling, Jonathan Panzo, it's all players who can play different positions, but I think that's also because of the flexibility it offers you in game. So if you've got someone like Lammers who is comfortable dropping into the midfield, and I don't think he's being signed as a Morelos replacement who's going to play 30 passes a game. I don't think that's exactly what Beale wants, but he does need players who are able to contribute, as he said quite recently in the press. If they're playing up front, they're able to contribute in lots of different phases of play. So I think that will definitely come into it. He doesn't just want someone who's going to stay on the last line and kind of not move the defence in any way.
Yeah, interesting. Right, folks, when Joshua said members video there, just in case you aren't aware, we have launched a membership scheme here at the Rangers Review YouTube channel. What you get for your £2.99 a month is 3 to 5 extra videos per week. So you'll always get your morning Q&A show as ever, and then there'll all be an afternoon show as well. Yesterday, I carried out an interview with a French football expert that covers Dijon, Julien Parisot, to ask him about Jonathan Panzo, and very interesting take on his time in France. Not overly enamoured by his contribution there, but of course they then went to Nottingham Forest before being loaned out to Coventry City, and that ties us in with your piece on the website this morning, Ewan. You discuss about the transfer state of play at Rangers, potential incomings and outgoings. We'll start with Panzo. What is the latest?
Yeah, Rangers' interest is genuine in Panzo. It has been for some time. There's been dialogue between the player and Michael Beale. Is my understanding they've had positive dialogue between the player and Michael Beale. I mean, it's just a case of a kind of waiting game now. I don't think anything's imminent on this one. There's been, speaking to people who are close to the deal, there's been no progression really in the last few days on the Panzo front. But I think if the money's there to do the deal can be done. He's obviously got other options from clubs in the English Championship. But I think the Rangers are probably kind of leading the race to sign him, certainly. And I think the fact that Ross Wilson's at Nottingham Forest now, of course, so I think that eases the dialogue between Rangers and Nottingham Forest on that. I think Panzo was definitely on the radar before Wilson moved down south. I think was it April he went to Forest. I think the interest was definitely known. So Michael Beale worked with Panzo at Chelsea back in the kind of younger days, so he fits the profile of the player that I think Beale made the comment towards the end of the season that players will come in who he's worked with before. So that's certainly one there.
Interesting. And in terms of potential outgoings, but update, there's a rumour, of course, about a noise regarding Ben Davis. Apparently, there's a possibility he could go back down south. And we'll tie in as well with Glenn Kamara. He's been speaking. Of course, Michael Beale has been commenting on Glenn Kamara. I think last week he discussed the midfielder. Kamara himself has told it a Finnish podcast. I've been in holiday mode, so I've taken my mind off football. We had conversations a couple of months ago, so I'm not surprised with those comments. I feel like I know where I'm at in my head, and he knows it too. I'm not going to say anything. Time will tell, I guess. Can you assume I'm seriously considering a move? No comment. How do I reflect on my time there? It's been amazing. 4.5 years I'll have spent there come this summer to join such a massive club, and I'll have all the support I did. The fans are amazing. And depending on where you go next, you might never see that again. They are crazy in a good way. The club's stature is massive, having a Europa League run, winning the league, going unbeaten, winning a cup. I had some good times there. We could definitely have done better with the teams we had. We just came up just a few times, but I had a really good time. I won trophies there and did things I'd never done in my career before. Ewan, that tells me that he's headed for pastures new.
Yeah, he's away, isn't he? When those comments came out, I kind of read them last night just after I finished work, and he's speaking in the past tense about Rangers, isn't he? You know, he's very much, you know, it's very telling. It's very rare that Glenn Kamara talks as well. I can't think he's not one who's does regular interviews, is he? So, you know, I think there's obviously interest last summer in Kamara. I think he's a player that could be sold to recoup money and spend it elsewhere. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I think it was the £5 million the fee was muted. I think Chris kind of broke that last night. When you think about it, if that £5 million came in for Kamara, would you spend it on Malik Tillman? You know, if the option was there, because people quite often said, you know, £5 million is a lot of money for Malik Tillman, and it is a big outlay for Rangers. But you know, if that money's coming in for Kamara, if you ask Rangers fans, would you be happy to essentially swap Kamara for Tillman? I mean, I don't think many would say no.
I think that's easy in theory. However, that brings us on to Malik Tillman, because that's other news that emerged yesterday via the Daily Mail, I think it was. I'll just give you an update on what was said there. Seems that Rangers facing stiff competition. The Daily Mail reports that Brighton and Brentford are both interested in signing Tillman. It's thought that Bayern Munich feel that they can get more than £5 million for the American international. Joshua, the longer this goes on with Malik Tillman, the less likely I reckon he is to joining Rangers. Is it one that you think might be tied up later on in the summer, or does this report tell us that he might just be out of Rangers' price range and Bayern Munich might be looking at offloading him to someone in the Premier League down south?
The thing is, obviously, is Rangers have done their business quite early this window, but it's still June 13th of June, so there's a considerable amount of time, almost 2 months, until the first competitive league game of the season. So there is time, theoretically, of course, for it to happen. There'll be no surprise to I think anyone that Malik Tillman's attracting a lot of interest, because again, he was probably Rangers' best player over the course. Yes, there was some deficiencies in his game, but I think in his first season in professional football at a club that is unique, even when you've grown up in a kind of super club environment like Bayern Munich, and in a club that faced a managerial change, that faced a nightmare time in Europe, that faced an injury crisis, and thus putting a lot of responsibility on him when maybe the plan wasn't to play him so regularly early on. I don't think you can question in hindsight they had a very good season. And obviously you'd presume that after not only a first year to kind of acclimatise, but under a manager in Beale who you'd trust to get the best out of him, playing with better players, playing on a better functioning team, that you'd see a better version of him. So I don't think signing him is a question if it's possible. But you're right, Derek. Clubs will look at that, and similarly, in the same way we're speaking about value for money with players like Lammers, they'll look at someone like Tillman and think, if they can get him on a decent price just now, then he's going to go for a lot more money in the future, because £5 million is a big outlay for Rangers. In the scheme of the Premier League, it's nothing, is it? So if you're paying a little bit more than that for a lot of potential for a player who's 20 years old, who has had such good pedigree coming through the Bayern Munich academy, it's probably a bit of a no-brainer. So remains to be seen what happens there. If there was any option to bring him back, I'd definitely be in favour of that. But as you say there, it might just not be as simple as that, and there's obviously quite a long way in the window to go.
Yeah, Ewan, there's a comment that came in here. I wanted to get your take on it. Just going back to Kamara. Interesting one here. With Kamara not getting many games lately and only having a year on his contract, are we really able to punt him for £5 million? I would bite your both hands off for £5 million if Rangers were to get that. Can they realistically receive that, do you reckon?
I think it's certainly on the optimistic side for Kamara. I mean, maybe like 18 months ago, a year ago, people were talking about 10, 12 million when he was kind of at his peak of his powers at Rangers. Just double checking his contract. He's got 2 years left in his contract.
Yeah, 2025, isn't it?
2025. Yeah. So that gives Rangers a little bit more kind of weight on their side when it comes to selling him. I think you can get £5 million for Kamara. It depends really who comes in for him. There's also been muted interest in England. I think Southampton was one of the names that was mentioned, and there's also a lot of interest for France. I actually expect them to go to France this summer, but you hear this English interest come up. I think you do get 25 million. That's very optimistic.
Yeah, what you been on?
I think you do get £5 million for Kamara, because he's 27 years old, so he's got a good bit of time left in the game. We think he'll be reaching his peak. He's also a full Finnish international as well. And when he's played for Finland on the biggest stage, he's looked pretty good, I think. So yeah, I think you've got to be optimistic there and look to get around that. If you got maybe, deals aren't structured these days where it's just, right, here you go, there's £5 million this summer.
Yeah.
With the way that they worked out and they're structured over years in clauses, I think you maybe get like 3.5 million up front and maybe 1.5 in appearance fees and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It certainly looks like he's headed for another club this summer, Glenn Kamara. Just going back to your piece as well, Ewan, we touched on Ben Davies. There's another player that could potentially leave this summer, Leon King. I think I've went on record. I think a loan move would be good for Leon and not to a team in Scotland. I'd like to see him venture down south to League One or a team in the Championship, just moving away from home and just I think it'll do him the world of good. But what's the latest on Leon?
Yeah, just in terms of Leon, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? His contract runs until 2026. So
yes,
and he just signed that, Ewan, didn't he? He signed that this season. He played obviously the most minutes in the Champions League as well. I think it was just after he signed that contract.
Yeah, so there's time there. I mean, there's lots of detail in the article as well. One for King I'd look at is maybe the homegrown situation at Rangers at the moment, and the fact they do have to have Scottish players. You've lost McGregor, Arfield this summer from the first team group who are Scottish. So if you look at the squad at the moment, there's not too many homegrown players there. Which I think off the top of my head, you've got McCrory, Ryan Jack, Lowry,
Devine.
So, a lot of these players are younger players who wouldn't really get a lot of minutes in the first team next season, I envisage. So I think that's one to keep an eye on in terms of the loan deal, is that Rangers will be conscious of the homegrown factor. Just going back to Ben Davies as well, I don't know what you think. I think I was actually okay last season at points. I think he played next to Connor Goldson. It was that kind of run of games where he looked quite good. I think Goldson's absence last season really showed how important he is to Rangers. I think if Davies was to play alongside Goldson, then you get the best out of him as well. And I think that if you look at Rangers centre-back options as it stands, you've got Goldson, you've got Suter, and you've got Leon King. Dujon Sterling can play at right centre-back in a back three centre-backs, but he's not going to play there in a back four, I believe. So, you need to keep players around in that position. Obviously, Panzo comes in, that's another one. But, John Suter's injury problems are well documented, so you've got to kind of be cautious with that as well. So, I mean, I think if Rangers could recoup the money that they paid for Ben Davies, then they'd maybe allow him to go in the summer. But I don't think there's any rush on either side to kind of let him go at the moment. So I don't think there's nothing kind of imminent on that at the moment either.
Yeah. We have just started the summer, of course, that the transfer window starts officially the 1st of July, I think it is, isn't it? Is that right? The 1st of July is when we it all kicks into gear. So there's still plenty of activity to occur before the closure of the window later on.
I think it's tomorrow. The transfer window opens. Am I wrong?
Is it tomorrow?
I think pre-contracts arrive on 1st of July, I think is what it is, which is when John Sterling will arrive. So. Yeah.
Big thanks to Dean Henderson, who's joined the channel and become a member. Thank you very much, Dean, for your support. It's greatly appreciated. Let's get to a point here. Billy McCulloch says, any update on Dessers? This is the other striker, of course, from Cyriel. It was at Cremonese, recently relegated side. Of course, Nigerian international. Another player Rangers have been heavily linked with, and that's a move that is... the wheels are well in motion. Joshua, have you seen much of Cyriel Dessers? From direct you again, folks, to I had a chat with the Fire Nerd podcaster that introduced us to the infamous horseshoe last week, Johan Brinkel, and he spoke very well on Cyriel. He said he wasn't too chuffed when he joined Fire Nerd, but he didn't want him to leave by the end of it. He says he's a top striker. What's your feeling on Cyriel Dessers, Joshua?
Well, I mean, similarly to Lammers, he's played at the very bottom end of Serie A. I think he played for, I think Cremonese were 19th. So slim pickings for them, kind of at the top end of the pitch as well. There's a whole scout report on the website. If you want to go and read more about his style, again, you can see him fitting in a 2, variable in the types of positions he can attack from either side or receive central. I've seen a lot of comparisons to Morelos, which I don't really agree with. He can take the ball in and he can turn his defenders, but that's not it's not an exclusive Morelos trait. What I think makes him quite different from Morelos is he's not a player that's going to really, I guess, play make from that number 9 position. He's not going to switch the play loads. He's far more likely to play bounce passes into midfield and try and bring teammates into play. Even when he was at Feyenoord at the top end of the Dutch league, he wasn't making a huge numbers of passes per 90. So again, I think it's more, instead of in the Morelos mould, it's more in this Beale mould of striker who wants to play 2 up top, who wants players who can attack from either side, who can drop into midfield, but also running behind, can use either foot. Really good presser, really good off the ball. I think we covered this last week, but one of the things that stands out, especially from his time at Feyenoord, is just how aggressive he is when Rangers don't have the ball, and don't underestimate how important that will be to Beale. Obviously, it's what strikers normally do on the ball that makes a difference, but if you've got 2 players up front that are as willing to work just as hard when they've not got possession, I think that'll make such a huge difference for someone like Beale, who wants to play with his line so high. And we've seen that in the Old Firm when Robbie McCrory was so far off his line as well. So definitely someone that fits into that mould. Similarly, when we're talking with Ewan about the defensive options there, in Ewan's article, he speaks about Beale wanting to add, I think it was it pace and athleticism or power and athleticism was the quote. And you can see that with a signing like Sterling, and obviously the interest in Panzo as well. Beale wants these styles of players to be able to, I guess, help Rangers as well compete in Europe. You look back to the 2021 window when they brought in Lundstram and Sakala, and it was always kind of noted that one of the real drivers in that recruitment that summer was trying to take Rangers into the next level European-wise. And obviously, although Gerrard wasn't there, that worked really well with Lundstram because he was kind of the protagonist of that Europa League run in the midfield, giving Rangers something they hadn't before. So, yeah, if you want to read more about Dessers, again, we'll be doing a members video on it later in the week, but you can also read the kind of full scout report on the website.
Yeah, just on Panzo, Jonathan Panzo, you can read the transcription of that chat I had with that French football journalist, folks. But Marcus says, morning all, interesting piece on Panzo, Derek. Worrying to read, he tends to give away a few penalties, though. We have a proud record to maintain here. Yeah, by all accounts, I think he is matured at Coventry City. I'm not entirely, I didn't watch much of him last season, but at Dijon, the lad Julian did tell me he was very excitable and it tends to dive in at points. And he didn't actually think that he'd fit into the Rangers first team straight away. He reckons that might be worthwhile sending him out on loan, which I'm not entirely sure that will be the case, but certainly seems like a substantial amount of money Rangers are willing to spend on Jonathan Panzo. And the fact that Michael Beale has worked with him at Chelsea before should give a bit of encouragement that he can develop him and move him on and improve him as a football player. Of course, just 22 years of age, so it's plenty of growing left in him. Interesting point that's came in here from Malt Whiskey just on King. Are we really going to let King go out on loan with Goldson injured, Suter maybe injured, Davis not proven, and Panzo not signed? What do you make of that, Ewan?
No, I don't think King will go out on loan. Just as I mentioned about the kind of depth Rangers need in that area as well, and the fact about the homegrown quota as well, I think is really important for the Champions League or hopefully Champions League spaces as well. I think what's interesting about the defence, also I spent the last few days kind of focusing on that, is that Beale's kind of bringing in players that can play in different positions in the defence. So you've got if Panzo comes in, he can also play left back as well, which is something to do if maybe Barisic leaves this summer. Both Sterling and Panzo can cover at left back, which is interesting, I think. And Sterling can obviously play right back and he can play right centre back. If you look at Manchester City this season, you look at Akanji, look at Ake, Kyle Walker, they can play in different positions, and look at the flexibility that gives Guardiola and his team selection. I don't think we're going to see Connor Goldson playing in the half spaces like John Stones, but I mean, the other players having that flexibility, I think it's really important to when you're building a squad. I think that's something that Beale's been really conscious of.
Yeah, Connor has been known to bomb forward right enough, hasn't he? When Rangers
yeah, he does. Yeah.
He does.
I think he'd quite fancy the John Stones role, to be fair.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, absolutely. I think he would fit into that Man City side like a glove. Right, let's finish up on this. Dave Fulton raises a point. He says, any approach for Maja yet? Now he's been released by Bordeaux. Of course, big news yesterday coming from France. Bordeaux, of course, they had a suspended game. The match was abandoned after a Bordeaux supporter attacked an opposition player on the field. As a result, that match wasn't replayed, and Bordeaux will now stay in League 2, and instead Metz have been promoted to League 1. So as a result, Josh Maja is now a free agent. He has been heavily linked to Rangers in the last a couple of months, probably now, even more so. Josh Maja, Joshua, would you like to see him pitch up at Ibrox?
Yeah, it's probably one to keep an eye on now that Bordeaux are not going up. I think it's been well documented, the kind of circumstances around his circumstance in France. Beale will want to, I guess, again, depends on if there's any outgoings, because you've got Cyriel and Cholak and Roof there.
Yeah.
I know if you're bringing in 2 strikers already, it does need to be a bit of movement out to allow more to come in. Who does Beale want to keep out of those 3? I think Roof, you know, we've spoken about
nobody's
it
buying Kamara Roof.
No one, and Rangers are not going to pay off his contracts, and they just have to pay what he would cost to stay. And even if you look back to last season, I know Rangers didn't go win the League Cup, but had they won the League Cup, it would have been Roof's goal that got them there. And there's more value in keeping him around for the same amount of money than just paying him that money. You know, so there's all these kind of factors. He's also had that surgery, which Rangers hope will kind of ease some of the issues that have plagued them. And I think, as Ewan wrote recently, in his first 2 seasons, his appearances were a lot higher, but that's still maybe not high enough. But hope that you can reach those levels instead of what last season was. Cyriel, the most goal contributions, I think, since Beale arrived in the league, and Cholak, although he didn't play much, Beale has spoken him up quite a lot. So Rangers are suddenly in a place, if Lammers and Dessers do join, where they've got a lot of options up front, but they need that. I mean, last season, if you look, especially after Beale came in, the lack of options up top was just so stark. I think especially in the Old Firm games at Hampden, where Rangers just didn't have difference makers. They didn't have players in either box, I think, to be fair, who could kind of capitalise on the good work box to box. So I don't think it's any coincidence that the kind of noise at the moment is all focusing on the forward line with Jack Butland already in place, because that's the 2 areas of the pitch I think that Rangers really, really needed to prioritise in the summer window.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a comment came in there, Bordeaux have appealed that decision, so watch this space with regards to that. But should Bordeaux not be admitted to the Ligue 1, then Josh Maja would become a free agent. So certainly one to keep an eye on. Right, folks, that'll do us there. Thanks to Ewan and Joshua, and to everyone interacting with the show as ever. It's greatly appreciated. Just a quick reminder again, if you want to become a member of the Rangers Review YouTube channel, now's the time to do so. You'll get 3 to 5 extra videos per week in the afternoon. You'll also get to watch videos like the one I did yesterday before it goes live to the general Rangers Review fan base out there on YouTube and social media. You also get priority comments as well. So £2.99 per month. It goes and supports the work we do here at the Rangers Review. So thank you to each and every one of you that have already signed up. Hundreds of you have done so already. So it really is mind-blowing. So thank you to you all. I'll be back again tomorrow with Stevie Clifford and a very special guest. So tune in for then. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye for now.